Time to talk about your thyroid. Who knows where the thyroid is? I'm going to give out prizes. Maybe not. But your thyroid sits here right at the base of your neck. So much power in such a little organ. It's incredible. Your thyroid is responsible for so many different functions. It's responsible for the quality of your hair, your skin, your metabolism, your gut function, even your bone health, your brain health, how you focus, how you concentrate, and so much more. So all is well when the thyroid's doing well, right? But the minute that thyroid starts to shift, maybe starts to peter out a little bit in a condition known as hypothyroidism, or speeds up too much in a condition called hyperthyroidism, well, then it doesn't really serve you well anymore and you simply stop feeling like yourself. I get to see this every day in practice at Center Spring MD, and it's something that I'm always educating women about. Here are the issues. Many women will start to have these symptoms, but they never get their numbers checked. They never get their labs checked. I did a video recently on the hormones that you need to know, and we talked all about the thyroid hormones that you should be checking out as well. So check that video out for a little bit more information there. But here's what we need to be very careful about, paying a lot of attention to. The thyroid today is under more stress than at any other time in modern history. Why? Well, there's a relationship between your thyroid gland and your adrenal gland, and they work together almost like a seesaw. The more stressed you are, the harder this poor thyroid has to work, draining and depleting your thyroid of everything it needs, making you hypothyroid. And then the harder this thyroid's having to work, well, it affects your adrenals or your stress threshold. So you go from being easy breezy, I got this, to suddenly everything is getting on your nerves and you're crying at a drop of a hat. Well, something may be off with your thyroid. There's no reason to despair. Don't sit in the corner wringing your hands. We got this and we're gonna figure it out. Here's what you gotta do. First of all, get those numbers checked. Get your TSH check, which is a way of looking at the thyroid and how the thyroid's functioning from the signaling right here at the pituitary. That pituitary says, hey, make thyroid hormone, and then signals the thyroid to produce T3 and T4. We know we want that pituitary signaling to be somewhere between 1 and 2. That's usually what works for the majority of patients. Now, sometimes we'll have somebody that works or feels better when their TSH is a little bit higher or a little bit lower, but that 1 to 2 is about average. That's where most people feel good. Now that T3, T4 should be optimized as well. We don't want those numbers to be low, and if they are, that tells another story. So step 1 is understanding what your thyroid is doing in the moment. That's maybe the easy part, right? Many of you can go in and get checked and get your thyroid numbers checked and figure out where they are. The trap or the challenge is that when you get those numbers checked, many times you're told, oh, it's normal, everything's fine, you're okay. And you know you're not okay, you don't feel good, and you're falling apart. So what do? Make sure the numbers are being interpreted correctly. Make sure that TSH is between 1 and 2. Your T3 and your T4 are optimized as well. Check out my hormone guide for the specifics on where all of those numbers need to be. But all of that will help you say like, hey, I'm not going crazy. No, it's not in my head. Something is really wrong here. Your next step then is to figure out where it's coming from. Are you stressed incredibly? And with stress management and gut support, help to balance your thyroid. Don't forget that thyroid-adrenal relationship. Do you have estrogen dominance? Any of you that have really high estrogen levels are actually sometimes having those levels high because you have a sluggish thyroid. So see if there's something going on between the thyroid and estrogen. And when it comes to food and diet, boy, does that influence your thyroid. Big time. We know that thyroid and insulin, the blood sugar hormone, work together as well. So if we're eating a diet that's not really right for us, sending our blood sugars ricocheting in all kinds of different directions, they're up, they're down, they're all over the place, then we know that we're creating thyroid havoc at the same time. So much so that people with thyroid issues shouldn't really be doing a lot of intermittent fasting. In fact, I saw a patient just the other day. She'd been doing some long fasts, and you know how I feel about those longer fasts, but she had been fasting for, I think she did a 5-day fast, and then she did another 3-day fast. So we're not talking the 16, 18-hour fast that many of you are doing, but these longer fasts that in turn affected her thyroid. As we looked at her numbers, we could see clearly where she had lost weight. Yay, that's awesome. She felt better. Her lipid numbers were down, but her thyroid numbers were starting to peter out very subtly as well. What was the advice to her? Let's not put the body under undue stress. You can fast, you can even intermittent fast, but these longer fasts are not really good for the thyroid. So the thyroid will respond to diet, to conditions of stress, to exercise, to gut health, to sleep cycles, and so much more. We want to get all of these pieces together before we just think about slapping on a thyroid hormone, because that's a whole another game. Probably needs another video, if you know what I mean. But that's a whole another game, and trying to figure out which medication is going to work for what patient with minimal side effects and not creating havoc all throughout the body. So let's break down what you can do. I want this to be actionable. I want you guys to be armed. I almost see you like soldiers, like marching in, I got this information. I know what to do. I'm going for it. So we know the labs that you need to test, right? You've got that down. You've written that all the way out. Let's talk about the diet that you should begin with. I would start with an anti-inflammatory diet, one that removes gluten, one that removes dairy, because inflammatory foods put more burden on the gut, put more stress on the body, make it difficult for the thyroid to do its job. In addition, we want to add foods high in zinc, high in selenium, high in iron. Iron's a big one when it comes to the thyroid, and in iodine. So things like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, getting in a little bit of seaweed, getting in that red meat once or twice a week. Those are things that will help keep this thyroid happy and healthy. All right, moving on from diet, let's talk gut health. Do you know what one of the most common gut patterns are? Actually, there are two. One of the two most common gut patterns there are with the thyroid. One is gluten. So many people with thyroid issues actually need to be gluten-free. Gluten is processed with bromide. Bromide is a chemical that actually impairs thyroid function. So we think that that's the reason for it. And then we also see a lot of candida or yeast overgrowth associated with thyroid function or thyroid dysfunction. In fact, there's a gene, it's called MTHFR C677T, and that gene in turn really does affect how much candida or how prone to candida you might be, and in turn affects thyroid function. So gluten and candida, that's your gut story to the thyroid story, something to keep in mind for sure. Then if you're trying to supplement, I would supplement with a good general thyroid supplement, which is going to have minerals in it. It's going to have some iodine in it. Maybe 15 to 20 milligrams of iron daily would be helpful as well. These are all things that help. And then you also want to make sure that gut lining is working. So getting in glutamine and probiotics should be part of a thyroid plan as well. Don't know what glutamine is. It's my favorite amino acid. It builds the gut lining, and it really does help absorption of thyroid hormone. All right, last but certainly not least is really looking at sleep and stress. Many of you tell me, well, I sleep 8 hours, but I sleep from 1 to 7. Is that 8? No, that's 6. I gotta go back to math class. But 1 to 9. And that doesn't count, my friends. And it doesn't count because you are disrupting the natural biorhythm or energy of the body. We need that pituitary. Remember the pituitary, the guy that says how much thyroid to produce, tells the thyroid basically what to do. He's the boss. Well, we need that pituitary to rest. And when it doesn't rest, then the signaling gets completely thrown off, and it needs to rest between the hours of roughly 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if you're not getting deep, consistent sleep, you're stressing out those adrenals, you're stressing out the thyroid, you will be prone to hypothyroidism. So sleep is important, stress management's important as well. And last, but certainly not least, is the environmental burden, right? We know that toxins, heavy metals, environmental chemicals, organophosphates, all of these things wear down thyroid function. In fact, in practice, we do these craniothermograms, and you can see even from here, from the dental work, how it's draining down into the thyroid and how all of that's getting impacted. So that's your thyroid treatment plan. And we didn't even talk medicine yet, but that's where you begin. That's where you start, by understanding how these patterns pertain to you and that it is actionable. There are things you can do before we even get to medicine. Next video, we'll talk about the medicines you should and should not take, the pros and cons of each of them. There's so many, and a lot of times they're going in and out of stock. We'll talk about that next. I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and share it with your friends. And don't forget, I post new YouTube videos every Thursday. Take care.